This is the proc set enabled version of Hunter Summoner for both Champion Point and No Champion Point PvP. I'm going to list the sets, abilities, and other choices, and then explain the synergy between them throughout the build. To start off, I am using Clever Alchemist, and on the front bar I am using the two-handed maul with the sharpened trait enchanted with the weapon damage enchantment. On the back bar I am using Morkelden bow with the powered trait and the reduced target weapon damage and spell damage enchantment. I am using a monster set. The helm and shoulders are Maw of the Infernal set. The chest and some of the body pieces are Morkelden. The other pieces are Clever Alchemist. On the necklace I have Trainee. On the ring I have a single Clever Alchemist ring, and the other ring is Ring of the Wild Hunt. I have Swift still on Wild Hunt. I do prefer the movement increase. On Clever Alchemist and on Trainee I've infused enchanted with weapon damage enchantments. The armor is all medium and all impenetrable. I have some stamina and some health enchantments on the body. This is to get to 40,000 health points and then the rest into stamina. For abilities, I am using on the back bar Critical Surge, Hurricane, Dark Conversion, Summon Unstable Clanfear, Ball of Lightning, and Summon Charged Atronach. On the front bar, I am using Daedric Prey, Crystal Weapon, Bound Armaments, again the Unstable Clanfear because it needs to be double slotted, Executioner, and Dawnbreaker of Smiting. As far as other choices, I am using the Serpent Mundus and Orzaga's Smoked Bear Haunch for food. I am a vampire. You can and should probably increase it to Vampire Stage 3. I haven't fed currently. All attributes are in the health. And I'm going to show you the stats with it fully buffed real quick. And as you can see, I hit 6.9 thousand weapon damage. That is important for the next update, which this build is currently set up for this update and the next update. It will become buffed for the next update. I'm just going to unsummon my Clanfear to stop the combat. So as for why the set choices I have made and why the skills I have chosen are because Clever Alchemist is one of the best stat increasing sets, and it can be on only one bar. That is very important. And gaining that 651 weapon and spell damage will also increase my Daedric Prey along with the stamina based abilities. This is more or less why I also kind of consider it a hybrid build, as I am using half stamina abilities, half magicka abilities, and at least one magicka damage dealing ability and 3 stamina damage dealing abilities. With Clever Alchemist, you also get the modifications of being a sorcerer and major brutality and major sorcery to get a much higher increase than the 651, which is also very important with proc sets curving on weapon or spell damage, whichever is higher. This does allow stamina builds to use magicka proc damage sets more effectively than magicka builds themselves. I am choosing Morkelden and Maw of Infernal for both the same reasons. With the update to proc sets, I feel that either a proc set with a very controllable trigger is very important. That way you can make sure you are dealing the damage with it when you are fully buffed, as you probably will need to be in order to get the maximum amount of damage out of your proc set. And because these have a high uptime. A very high uptime will also mean that you will take full advantage of when you are fully buffed. Both Maw and Morkelden are very easy to trigger with light attacks or heavy attacks on the front bar, and then automatically on the back bar when you just hit them with your bow light attack, which is very easy to do, and you have a very high uptime. Again, this makes sure you get the most out of your sets while you have them available. As you have noticed, I do not have two-handed Vatron slotted on this build. To me, it was between Mauve Infernal versus Vatron during the next update and during this update. Well, it will take approximately 6 GCDs in order to increase and get ready for your Vatron heavy medium weave attack in order to deal that damage. During that amount of time, Ma will have attacked approximately at least 3 times, meaning it would have dealt at least 12,000 tooltip damage, while your Vatron would only deal approximately 10,000 damage. There is the weapon damage modifier that Vatron two-handed would provide that I do not have access to. However, Daedric Prey increasing both Morkelden and Maw damage by 20% does outweigh that 150 weapon damage even after the modifiers. I went with the two-handed Maul with Sharpened because it does provide more damage even with the proc sets curving in the next update than a two-handed Greatsword Nirnhound. Powered on the back bar in order to increase my healing, as weapon and spell damage does not affect this build's healing in any way. Going to the abilities, with Alchemist increasing both weapon and spell damage, it will increase Daedric Prey. It is not shown. I will go through that later. Crystal Weapon is the burst damage ability. It is very easy to activate with light attacks, and in decreasing their armor, giving you more penetration, also increasing Daedric Prey and your pet's damage. Bound Armaments also increases the burst damage and gives you an incredibly powerful attack, especially when fully buffed. The Clan Fear is a staple in my opinion. It gives for a massive spot heal, especially on the back bar when you will most likely use it trying to survive. It gives over a 14,000 tooltip instant heal, along with it being slightly expensive. That is why I have Orzaga and Dark Conversion in order to keep the Magicka high and fully charged. That allows you to use Ball of Lightning, Clan Fear, and Roll Dodge lucratively to ensure your survival whenever you need it. Ball of Lightning can be expensive, but the combo, or at least the order in which I do it, is Ball of Lightning, Dodge, Conversion, and then repeat. This will not drain your stamina or your magic enough to make you depleted. However, it will allow you to get away from all opponents and keep you from dying, because Ball of Lightning and Roll Dodge plus the heals from Conversion will easily keep you from dying in just about any circumstance. The only time I do die on this build is when I too much stay in the pocket trying to get a kill or toy with people rather than escape. Hurricane is a great ability as it deals damage and keeps Nightblades out of cloak. It also increases the resistance, which I don't find as valuable on this build because you run away if you're not in a good position. However, the Minor Expedition is very valuable. That is also why I have the bow on the back bar, as well with getting light attacks in order to proc the sets. I also get Major Expedition simply by roll dodging, which is very often with this build. I'll show you what these stats look like fully buffed. Another reason why I didn't go with two-handed Vatron is because I'd have to then use Rally, and I do not get to use Critical Surge or Power Surge in order to buff my Daedric Prey. That's another loss for using that arena weapon over using, say, Clever Alchemist on the front bar. So just to show some tool tips real quick. Almost 10,000 there, over 10,000 there, and with that curving, that will be incredibly high. I'm sure by now I lost my enchantments. Let me just see if I can get that going once again. Anyway, you get the basic idea. This will be higher tooltips because I will have it all fully procced at the time. But you can see already that is incredibly high amount of damage, and it will get higher with proc sets curving in the next update. What you will be looking at is at about 7,000. Well, every 650 weapon damage or spell damage is 10% increased damage to your proc sets. So at 7,250, you have increased proc sets damage by 10% over live currently. This doesn't always happen, but my set does get really close to that amount, which you can then expect that proc set to do more about 5,000 to 6,000 damage every 2 seconds because of the buffs and because of Daedric Prey. Now I'd like to go through the champion points. This build is for both champion point and non-champion point, but I'd just like to show what I have chosen thus far and how I've allocated them. I have used Gifted Rider, Treasure Hunter, just because you do occasionally find treasure chests on your travels and you always want to get better items if you have to, especially if you end up doing some sort of random. Rationer and Steed's Blessing. I find Steed's Blessing and Gifted Rider to be really important for combat, because when you're in Cyrodill or in some of the battlegrounds, they do allow you to move more quickly and get to those fights more quickly or get out of fights more quickly. And so you actually get a benefit out of the green tree while in combat, or not in combat, but while trying to go to combat. And that definitely increases your PvP experience. I like Rationer because I use Orzaga, and that's an expensive food. And that way I get 30 more minutes of my very expensive food. So here's the blue CP tree. I have Resilience listed. That gives me 10% mitigation against critical damage, which is very important for PvP. And these passives you can try. I haven't maxed out because I don't have enough yet, but once you get enough, you can max them out. The offensive one. These are going to change. Some of these will be reduced, but I will go through and update the build with the champion points once those do get changed. But for this is what I'm currently using, and it won't change that much, but there will be a difference. I have slotted the weapon and spell damage, adding like Untamed Aggression and Wrathful Strikes in order to buff both the proc sets in the next update and the damage dealing abilities of both my weapon of magicka and spell damage, and weapon and physical damage abilities. Single target, because most of my abilities on this build are single target and burst damage. When you get more champion points, you can fill out these passives more and better. So I did like to max out the healing one for my clan fear, especially. That spot heal is very important. The interesting one, the red tree, I went with Slippery because automatic break free for free is great for any build, magicka or stamina. Boundless Vitality because of the max health, and that affects my clan fear's heal and survivability. It seemed like a automatic pick for me. Expert Evasion, a free roll dodge, is always great for both magicka and stamina. It really adds to your survivability. Both Expert Evasion and Slippery seem like auto slots to me on just about any build. These are how I have some of these passive slotted. And in Rejuvenation, 150 health, magic, and stamina recovery seems way too good to pass up for one of these CPs. 450 added stats just seems great no matter what build you are as well. So to me, 3 of these become really easy to slot, and you have like one extra one to play around with, whether it be armor or health. I went with health. If you had more of a shield, these are also great options. These would definitely lend themselves to a great health-based roll dodging medium build, kind of like this, if I want with bone shield instead on my bar somewhere. And I almost forgot to mention the race is Dunmer. This is important because it adds both weapon damage and spell damage and stamina and magicka, which this build relies heavily on both. And being a vampire, the flame resistance is also really useful. So Dunmer is really the best race for this build out of all the race choices you can make. This is my Hunter Summoner in Open World CP and then later BGs with no CP. As you can tell, I'm facing a Templar here, which seems to be a rather soft target, which are my favorite kinds of targets in IC. As you can see, my button layout's a bit differently. I do like to change it up sometimes for the ability to hit the buttons more easily. As you can see, my Executioner hit 8.5k. I like to do either solo play or outnumbered play. I do not like it when I have outnumbered enemies, so I don't show you clips like that. I like to show clips of me facing equal opponents or opponents I like to hunt down. Maybe a few easy kills if I can't get a better kill than that. Here's a really good clip against me and this Warden. Warden's obviously using Crimson and some other proc sets with high health, and I was able to just brawl with this guy for a very long time, eventually taking him out. As you can see, my Clanfear is my main heal, great heal. I don't have a lot of resistance, but I am able to take a lot of damage because of that massive health pool and those really big Clanfear heals. Using Boundless and my pets as the pressure source, maybe not so much dots, but like dots, while using my crystal weapon as my form of burst. I use streak or ball of lightning as my snare removal and my root removal when I don't want to roll dodge. I like to use Daedric Prey in order to modify damage, trying to beat them down as long as possible, then go right into an Executioner. Sometimes I like to go into the sewers and start hunting players like this. I hope people do start using Gaze of Sithis and can't block. A lot of damage prevention comes from blocking. If they can't block, my build does a whole lot better. He's trying to escape me. He can't escape, mainly because he's in combat. I don't think he really does a lot of PvP to know that, because he would have not been hopping around trying to get through that door had he known that. He has some good defenses with his shields, some offense, but not enough to really bring me down. I'm being careful here because I saw him use his negate, and I didn't want to get caught in there not being able to heal. I'm using Alchemist, so I got my Alchemist going, getting my burst set up. Dawnbreaker, I miss a lot with that. I'm not sure if that's because of position issues or just because I need to be a lot closer to my opponent. I remember it having a much bigger cone than it seems to have. He's doing a really good job surviving, and then I'm going to line up my burst, and with bound armaments, there's nothing he can do. Here's another kill from an NB who tried to take out our flag when I was there. Took him out real quick. Here's a real simple hunting. I like to travel around, maybe find someone like this. Poor low level doesn't even know I'm really there, and before he can really do anything, it's going to be too late because he is such a low level. But I like to do my hunting in IC, and when you're in IC, you're all fair game. Another, not as low, but lower than what I'm used to facing down an opponent. But he does have some guards there, so maybe he'll have a better chance. I like to do the light attacks to proc while I'm moving in to proc Morkeldin and my Maw, and then just hit as hard as I can and then run away. This build, most of its mitigation comes simply just from running away, using Ball of Lightning, Roll Dodge, and Dark Conversion and Clanfear for survival. I didn't want to kill this poor little level 11 guy, but I couldn't let the whole group escape without me killing someone, and he just happened to be in the last. See another low level. When you're in IC, you got to expect to hunt some players. Didn't even have to really use the Dawnbreaker. I think he died before that. But now we're into Battlegrounds. This is my bread and butter. What I prefer to do is Battlegrounds. You can just see how the build goes. Executing for like 8k damage. Very high mobility. Using Dark Conversion and Clan Fear for survival. Outnumbered plays pretty good just because you have such high mobility. Using line of sight is your main advantage. You're not going to be able to sit and face tank 2 or more players, unfortunately, because you see he's starting to get low. I'm about to kill him, and then there's that other guy. I have to start using line of sight, give up until I get a better position like I do here, where he came and separated himself from his ally, and then I could focus on him and then go back to the other enemy. I do not like trying to take on several opponents at once because I don't have a high resistance, just a high health pool for high heals. I can take a few hits, but not as much as, say, like a Warden or a Necro. I like these Battlegrounds, are my favorite. Just some examples of gameplay. This is a bit outnumbered, but these are Nightblades and what looks like a Sorcerer, so they're not the tankiest of builds. I don't have to worry so much about my damage not getting through. And then this guy's a Nightblade, so he just disappears, and I gave up on him. Chaos Ball. I got a lot of Chaos Ball. Did not get much Deathmatch. You never seem to get much Deathmatch anymore. The build does have surprisingly a high amount of burst and damage for having 40k health. Daedric Prey is one of my go-to abilities as it buffs up my pets, keeps the damage going, knocks Nightblades out of stealth. That's one of the, and Cloak, that's one of the better usages, and it can't be blocked, which is great for your burst. A lot of players end up killing the Clan Fear. You got to make sure your Clan Fear is up all the time, or else you won't have the heals necessary to survive these kinds of battles. Dawnbreaker is your hard CC. Because I'm using Alchemist, I try to use my potions when I can use my ultimate and get most of my burst in. The potions I prefer to use are Tri-Pots. Those are the best pots in my opinion for this build because I like the Magicka, I like the Stamina, and those additional percentages on both of them is massive for this build. Detection potions are the next one just for Nightblades, but outside of that, I don't use Immovable, and I don't use the resistance gaining pots, even though you could use a lot of those for this build to gain more survivability. I just prefer the sustain of the 3, and I also like to use them as a health heal when necessary. Another example of using the Dawnbreaker, getting them as down as possible. I try to use Alchemist only on my front bar when I have to. If I don't have to, I try not to. Most of these clips you're going to see my Alchemist active because that's when you are going to get your kill. That is also 20 seconds, and you better get your kill or come close to getting a kill within that time. It's a really good set, one of the better sets, especially with how they're going to change proc scaling. This build, again, only gets buffed with the next update because it is the same except for it has a higher weapon and spelled or weapon damage that it can reach beyond the 6,500. So it can reach up to 7,400, but that is with continuous. Without continuous, it's about 7,000, about around 7,000. Still an increase in the damage during your next update from your procs. They just got buffed. This build is just buffed next update. They didn't really accomplish what they were going for, except for really making builds more focused, less variety, and really hurt PvE proc builds that are not optimized. But again, this is a build that's only going to get buffed with the Blackwood update. You can see a lot of high pace action. I don't like to stick around in one spot. Using the Dawnbreaker with your clever Alchemist. This is the no proc set version of Hunter Summoner for Champion Point and No Champion Point Cyrodill. I'll go through the sets and abilities and other build options and how they interact together. Starting off, I have the Maul of Agility in Sharpen trait with the weapon damage enchantment increase. I have both weapons as agility, and then the jewelry is also agility. I have the Bow of Agility in the Powered trait. It is powered to increase the heals when I am trying to escape and dodge rolling from my opponents. I have the reduced target weapon damage enchantment because when starting off I would like to reduce my opponent's ability to heal and deal damage to me. On the head, it's Balorg in the impenetrable trait with a stamina enchantment. I have Balorg because it adds both weapon and spell damage, which is useful for this build. I am also using Shacklebreaker, the complete set. The chest and legs are in heavy with health enchantments, also all impenetrable. I am using Shacklebreaker because every stat is used by this build, and that would make it one of the most stat dense builds available in No Proc Cyrodill. On the shoulder I have Mollog. It is because it also adds weapon and spell damage, impenetrable with a stamina enchantment. It is also in medium. It is because, again, it is very stat dense for a build that uses both weapon damage and spell damage. Shacklebreaker Waist in light with a stamina enchantment. Shacklebreaker Gloves in light with the impenetrable trait and stamina enchantment. There's the heavy legs of Shacklebreaker, and then the medium Shacklebreaker. Altogether is 3 medium, 2 heavy, and 2 light to gain some health, weapon damage modifiers, and spell penetration, which is useful for this build. I have a necklace and a ring of endurance, both in the infused trait with weapon damage enchantments. There is the other agility with the weapon damage enchantment in robust. I am considering changing it to infused as well. That way I get even more weapon damage that can be further modified. As for the character, all attributes are in the health. It is a Dunmer race. Again, the added weapon and spell damage is very beneficial for this build, along with the stamina and magicka. And the flame resistance is also good for being a vampire, which this character is as well. That is the unbuffed stats. The penetration comes from having a Maul front bard and the sharpened trait. You will gain more penetration with the crystal weapons damage ability once you hit your opponent. I am using the Serpent Mundus for increased recovery. Again, it's vampire. You can feed to increase it to stage 3. That would probably be best for your survival. I definitely use the sneak speed and the running around while in the sneaking mode. And I used Orzaga Smoked Bear Haunch as the food. In both the proc and no proc versions of this build, all abilities and attributes are exactly the same, along with the food and the Mundus. You do not change anything, and the champion points are also the same. As for the skills, on the front bar, I have Executioner, Bound Armaments, Daedric Prey. Again, with this build in the no proc, Daedric Prey isn't as good as it is in the proc version because you don't have as many pets. However, you could switch it to Haunting Curse, though the added casting of Haunting Curse over Daedric Prey, because it happens more often, will put a bigger drain on your magical pool, and you may not be able to sustain it as well as you can with Daedric Prey. Unstable Clanfear. This is your main heal. Few opponents will catch on, but if they do, they will start targeting your Clanfear to eliminate your main heal, which is a good distraction for you and gives you an opportunity to escape if you absolutely must. But make sure you always have your Clanfear up. That is the main way you stay survived. Then we have Crystal Weapon. This is your main spammable. It also reduces your opponent's armor. That gives you even more damage. Dawnbreaker of Smiting. This is also your main hard CC. And on the bow bar, we have Critical Surge, Hurricane. The Minor Expedition is very valuable on this build, as you do not get Wild Hunt as you would in proc, but this is still a very fast build as your opponents also don't get those additional speed buffs. With being a Sorcerer, you have Ball of Lightning, which is the best escape tool there is available to you. I have Dark Conversion because I use a lot of the magical abilities. As you can tell, most of my abilities on the back bar are magicka. I have exactly half Magicka and half Stamina abilities. I have 1 Magicka attack and 3 Stamina, potentially 3 Stamina attacks. That's why I consider this build hybridish at the very least. I have Unstable Clanfer double slotted as you have to. Though on the back bar with power, it becomes a very powerful heal, going over 14.5k. There's your Ball of Lightning, one of the best escape tools, and I do not see how you could use pretty much any other ability over it. Summon Charged Atronach. It is my bigger ultimate used against multiple opponents, or if I feel like I need an area in which I need my own line of sight object without using my clan fear. This is a great ultimate for that, and it also does the AoE damage, and if you manage to keep the battle within that area next to your Atronach, it will end up dealing more damage than your Dawnbreaker. Also, with the desyncs and position problems with the game, it makes it a much more reliable ultimate to deal damage than Dawnbreaker when you are overwhelmed or in fast-moving combat. As for the champion points, again, these are both same in the proc and the no proc version. I am using the mount speed and movement speed bonuses and champion points because I feel like those are the only ones in the green tree that can be really beneficial during PvP. So I have Gifted Rider, Treasure Hunter, because you never know when you might find a treasure chest, I suppose. Steed's Blessing, that's the main one that I was talking about when you're out of combat. Rationer, that one's great because of Orzaga's very expensive price. It takes 15k now, at least, to make 4 of them. Weapon Decay, the Way Shrine one's always great. I should put more points into this Breakfall because I have had a werewolf fly off a cliff and I thought I was going to kill him from the distance and it ended up saving him, so this is probably one that deserves a lot more investment than I have. In the blue tree, I have the Resilience because I believe critical resistance, especially in no Proc Cyrodill, is very valuable. I try to max out as many of these passives as possible. Most of my investment are into these passives. You can definitely get a lot more stats if you had more champion points than I do. Deadly Aim, almost all of the abilities are single targets, so this would be the biggest beneficiary for the percent modifiers. I also went with the Wrathful Strikes and Untamed Aggression because they add weapon and spell damage, which I use both of, so it's a more heavily dense CP choice than if you went with just, so like the critical damage ones that I would not be able to take advantage of, or putting the points into the max magicka because it's only 1 instead of the stamina. Because my critical chance is so low, I don't invest any in these champion points, while many other players would. At I believe it's like 20-something%. It's really not a viable strategy to invest in critical damage, which also means in the proc version you could get away with using Malakath instead of Wild Hunt and just add flat out 16% damage because the critical chance is so low on these builds, which I don't mind. I prefer more of a brawler and not relying on critical damage, especially with so many people now running Impenetrable and the base crit resistance modifiers, and then even in Cyrodiil a lot of people are running Fortified Brass, but Impregnable. So it becomes less and less valuable to invest in your critical chance and critical damage, especially on my builds. I also like investing in these passives, so it would be way more valuable on this one to invest in the stamina and the magicka. I like investing in the Blessed because that really helps the clan fear heal, especially as a passive. And over on the red side, I'm using the same one, Slippery and Expert Evasion. I find both of these are massive stamina savers when you're trying to escape in champion point land. A free dodge is great, and then even if it actually is really quick. I've been paying a lot more attention to the automatic break free, and is as quick as I can do it with buttons. And even if you do hit it with buttons, it won't charge you that stamina. So this is actually becomes a automatic choice for me, along with expert evasion. I like max health because all of my heals, well, at least clan fear, is based on max health. Conversion doesn't really care what your max health is. However, none of them are affected by my weapon or damage or my spell damage. They're all just set based, so I like the health to help clan fear instead of the resistance, which is probably would be my next choice. If I wasn't going with health, I'd definitely go with the armor upgrade champion point. And then, of course, to me, rejuvenation is an absolute must because it is so dense. 450 regeneration stats, recovery stats is great. The health isn't so great anymore, especially up, but it's free, and I definitely use the magicka and the stamina. So even if you only use those two, it's still 300 recovery just for the champion point. Makes it an auto easy pick for me. Here is some Cyrodill PvP action. I'm fighting a warden. This was a long brawl, so I cut it down just to the end here. He was really tough. I ended up not using a curse a lot because his Betty kept purging it, and he would take out my clan fear. As you can tell, I don't really have to worry at all about him killing me. I have a big enough heal, and I can really control the pace of combat, and if I really wanted to, I could always leave. Trying to time Dawnbreaker with crystallized weapon and bound ornaments to try and take him down, keep the pressure up. He did have a bear. I had to kill it several times to keep it from getting in my way. As you can tell, he tries to resummon it at times, but has to cancel it in order to survive. I like using this layout, even though Daedric Prey doesn't hit as often as Haunting Curse, but it is a good thing to keep the pressure up with Timed Burst, and does add a little bit more damage from your Clan Fear and your Adronach if you use them. As you can tell, he killed my Clan Fear again, which normally is a good move, but with this much health, I have enough cushioning to take the time to resummon it typically. I like to use Dawnbreaker for the hard CC. Unfortunately, when you use bound ornaments, if they dodge roll, they're going to dodge all 4 of them, even though you would think maybe one of them would hit, but they all will be dodged. See, I'm just working them down, bringing them down to the health. Good time CC there. Can't overcome the damage, and I was able to kill him. Remember, there are no procs in this. I'm not a big Cyrodill fan because it's hard to find good combat, not a bunch of Zergy combat. I can't wait for procs to come back on console. There will be a no proc campaign in PC and maybe eventually for console, but there are no direct plans for it to come out. As you can see, I'm facing a Nightblade here, and I'm using Daedric Prey to keep him out of cloak as much as possible. I'll be able to use Hurricane as well to try and keep him out. But always using the Daedric Prey as much as possible to make sure when they do cloak like there, they have only a few seconds before they come back out. That's mostly what I do against these Nightblades because I don't always carry detection pots, and eventually they just can't out heal the overall damage when you keep the pressure up and they end up dying. See, again, I like to stock Prey here, using sneak and stealth in the open world. I'm not so good at using it to my advantage to kill, because this guy obviously was able to get away, but came close to killing him, and I eventually do work them down. But that's why I like being vampire, is when I am sneaking around, I'm not as slow as I normally would be without that. And then you can get that weapon or damage boost when you come out of sneak and stealth with being vampire if you are at those higher level stages. And eventually you just end up working them down. Streak wasn't enough to save him, or I guess it was ball of lightning. I like to try to engage someone from stealth, that way they don't know that I'm there right away. Open world has no procs right now, so I'm using the agility, shackle breaker, and all what I listed earlier. I missed with my Dawnbreaker, but as you can tell, Daedric Prey was enough to kill him afterwards. I'm using this as an example of getting away. The ball of lightning is really easy to escape people after dodge roll and with our conversion. As you can tell, this is multiplayer and outnumbered gameplay clips. It's really hard to find one-on-one in Cyrodill anytime. No CP Cyrodill is completely like empty. I don't see anybody in there. It makes it very difficult to find anything to do. And another Nightblade, these are very common, and that's why I like to show it, is because you will more likely not find Wardens and Nightblades and Sorcerers, and not very much else. Maybe the variety and class differences will show up again once procs come back, hopefully, because right now it's mostly just, again, Sorcerers and Nightblades and maybe the Warden. Very rarely do I see Templars or Necros. And again, this is a good example of facing a really high health Warden in open world. I was lucky enough to find a one-on-one out here. It is also kind of common to see similar names over because not many people do roam in Cyrodiil alone, not in a Zerg that isn't really good themselves. I happened to find this guy in two completely different locations, Bruma and then the place by the EP bases. Red is always Zerging, it seems. But this is a good example of how this build works in open world without the proc sets. You can still deal damage without changing your layout, without changing your champion points. Even though I much prefer the proc version, this just goes to show you that you can have a really good version with no procs. It's using that kind of hybrid-y Daedric Prey or Curse, whichever you did decide to go with if you decided to make a build like this. Because that burst damage from the 1,000 additional spell damage and weapon damage that Zeus gives us, it allows you to have a build just like this. And again, I'm working them down. It's a brawler build. I prefer to brawl them down. Eventually get them stunned. And you get them so low health that they can't recoup from your execution or spam. And I hope you enjoyed my videos, guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.